What's going on, everybody? My name is Nick Dreddick, and today I'm going to be recapping my PCT through hike from 2022 and explaining how I did not reach my goal of hiking the PCT in 60 days. So first I wanted to start off with what I expected to happen and what my goals were going out onto the PCT. So I had full intentions of hiking the PCT in 60 days. I set up my food along the trail, shipping myself 15 boxes along the entire trail. I tailored all my training to high mileage days, lots of running, lots of hiking, and basically my mindset, gear, everything to shoot for that 60-day mark. I was fully bought on. I from day one had full intentions of hitting 40 plus miles a day and seeing how far my legs could take me. So on my trip, I hit most of my issues kind of right off the bat. I flew into San Diego the day before. I had a buddy of mine who lived in LA, who him and his family kind of drove down. They picked me up at the airport. We were able to go around San Diego, get some food, things like that. And then he dropped me off at Otzi's base camp, which Otzi runs a base camp in I think it was Cajon, California, which was not too far from where the PCT started. And basically he runs a base camp. I met him through Facebook, through the PCT page, and I was able to link up with him, stay the night at his house. He gave me a ride to the trail in the morning. It was awesome. I was so thankful for for his hospitality to give me a place to stay and a ride to the trail bright and early in the morning, because I wanted to kind of start off first thing, so we were up and out the door by 5. So it was really appreciated to have to have a ride that early and to get out there. Basically starting right from the trail, the first 20 miles went fantastic. I was just so happy to be out there after over a year plus of planning and just like all this thoughts and time of and effort and energy into all the preparations, and I was finally just out there taking my first steps. It just really was. It was everything I imagined it to be, and I was just kind of free at that moment. I thought I was doing pretty well, but I ended up not eating enough, I think, within the first 20 miles, and I was like feeling so good. I drank plenty of water the night before, had a big meal. I was ready to go kind of right out the gate, and I guess I wasn't taking in quite enough food. I was trying to drink plenty of water, had electrolytes, all those things. Like I did my homework. But right around mile 20, right before I got to Lake Moreno, I went down to the little convenience store there, and I was starting to cramp. And so I figured, all right, I would stop there, get some extra water, sit, drink as much water I could, eat some beef jerky or something with some salt in it, just to get some salt in my body, hopefully help relieve some of the cramps. I sat down, took a little break, tried to drink as much water as I could, refilled everything, and then got back on the trail, and then just basically could not stop the cramps from happening. For that very first day, I went from the border all the way to Mount Laguna at mile 42. Those last 20 miles were just absolute hell. I was cramping the entire time. I was having to adjust how I walked and how far I stepped, because if I stepped wrong, my calf might cramp. If my calf cramp and I locked my leg up, then my quad would start cramping. If I straightened my leg too much, my hamstring would cramp. I was having to be very careful, and I was trying to really monitor how hard I was pushing. Decided just to keep walking and just kept taking one step at a time, drinking as much water as I could, packing on electrolytes, but I could not seem to get away from the cramps. I think ultimately it just came from that I kind of acclimatized to that kind of desert heat. I'm used to the East Coast where it's humid as can be. Even though it's hot as hell, it's soaking wet. You're pouring sweat, but you're soaking. The water stays on you. Whereas the desert, everything is dry. It's almost like as I'm sweating, the water is just drying up as I'm walking. So I guess that was the biggest thing I wasn't used to, and that kind of really threw my body for a loop. And basically throughout this whole cramping process, obviously the heat was getting to me. It really messed with my appetite. I felt that I didn't have an appetite for any of the food that I brought, or really any food at all. It was like it took a lot for me to get excited to eat. So I was having to force myself to eat, which made me kind of not eat as much as I should have. And I was trying to drink as much water as I could to kind of make up for it. And yeah, it was just kind of a miserable experience. And basically any chance I could, I would get service, and I'd call my wife, and my wife would call in my mom, and I would just be talking to them, explaining how bad I was cramping, all those things like that. And they were trying to console me as much as they could, and keep motivating me not to quit, and to make sure I was doing everything I could to to get the cramps to go away and to keep moving, because at that point, you know, you couldn't stop. And that ended up being the biggest mind thing of them all, is that, you know, with every step I was in so much pain. I was so on the verge of cramping. Basically every step I took, the cramping made my body get really sore, so all my muscles started getting so tight that they were just incredibly sore. So then walking became harder and harder. Yeah, and it was just like, if I stopped, I wasn't getting any closer to my destination or any closer to help or any closer to anything. But every step I took hurt so bad, so it was like this in between, to where it was like I couldn't stop. But if I kept going, I was just enduring step after step of just nothing but pain. And I had parts where my like neck and jaw and my upper traps were cramping, I think, just from holding the book bag. And yeah, it was a rough experience. And I got into Mount Laguna. It was dark. It was probably 10:30, almost 11 o'clock, and I was walking as slow as can be when I got up. I took the little alternate route into the Mount Laguna, the little campground that they had there, and my thought was that I would try to shower, and if I could get into their shower and cut some warm water on. I've had cramps before, where if I got into some warm water, it helped calm my muscles down and would relieve some of the cramps. So my thought was that if they had a shower and it had warm water, I could get in there, you know, just shower, get my muscles to relax and stop cramping. Then I could sleep, get up in the morning, and just kind of assess, and at least just hike as much as I could and just kind of keep knocking off miles. I got to the campground, realized that they did have a shower there, so I got some quarters, went in there, kind of got all undressed. You know, it was dirty, tired. I had to be careful. If I like lifted my arm too much, my back would cramp. It'd get my pants off. If I straightened my leg, my hamstring. So I was in there probably making all kinds of noises. And oh man, it was a rough time there, and it was late. It was probably 11 o'clock at that point when I was in the shower. And I put the quarters in, got the water on, cut it to as hot as it can be, and the water just really never got hot or even really warm. It was almost kind of cold. So yeah, it was such a disappointment when I got in that shower, and it was just like I was like, no, that's hot, and I was changing the nozzles every which way, seeing if it was, you know, if I could get the water to get hot, and it didn't. So I got all the dirt off me, cleaned up, decided since I was already in the shower, I was going to make the most of it and just get fresh, and then just try to go find a little spot, throw my mat down and sleep. And so that's what I did. I cleaned off a little bit. I carried some bed clothes with me that were separate from the hiking clothes that I had. I threw those on. I found a little spot in between these two trees. I set up my tarp, got underneath it, and just, you know, laid down and did the best I could to sleep. That first night I probably slept maybe 3 hours in total. And because I couldn't get the water to really get warm, my cramps never really went away. So I was all night just kind of tossing and turning. Woke up probably about 6 o'clock and, you know, just kind of packed my things and kept moving. And honestly, the second day was even rougher. I started moving. I was able to get a little bit of food down for breakfast. I think I had one of the, like an oat bar or something, and just kind of kept moving, drank a little bit of water. And yeah, the second day is when everything kind of really hit me. Right from the start, I noticed that my stomach was not right. I had zero appetite, and food started to actually make me a little bit nauseous. I kept, you know, drinking water I could hold down. Every time that I ate, I could like nibble and eat, and then when I got to like a certain point, my stomach would just not handle anymore. I'd go over and just kind of like dry heave and just throw, you know, different like spit and bile, and it just, you know, it was not fun. And I kind of just pushed. I ended up hiking about 30 miles that second day. So I hiked 42 miles the first day, then I hiked about 30 miles the second day. It was really just miserable the entire time. Was sick for the second half of the day, where I was literally, you know, throwing up, dry heaving. I felt nauseous. I found a little place to pull over for the night. It was probably, I think it was about 5 or 6 miles outside of Scissors Crossing, where I could maybe get a ride into Julian if some things got worse. So when I got to that campsite that night, in my mind I was already kind of like thinking that if this didn't get better, that I would probably need to stop in Julian, because I figured if I stayed sick and went any farther, that I could be kind of, you know, making some bad choices and you know, risking my life in ways that I shouldn't. I wanted to just sleep, see what I could do, and then wake up the next morning and kind of make that decision. that night I couldn't have slept more than an hour. Basically, I was up probably every 30 minutes. I was just nauseous, and I got to a point where water was starting to make me sick too, where if I drank too much water, I'd have to like almost like spit it up in a way, and it was just, so that whole night was just miserable, just tossing and turning. I didn't really sleep. Basically was just dying for the sun to start coming up so that I could kind of make my way out. I was already, you know, pretty down and pretty out at that point. And basically, when the morning came, I got on the phone with my wife and my mom, and we were all just kind of talking. I was explaining how bad of shape I was in, that I still couldn't hold down food. But essentially, you know, I had to make a call, so I started packing up my camp. I got everything in my book bag, threw it on, was just about to get off the phone with my wife and my mom, started taking the first couple steps, and I felt something wet running down the back of my leg. And I thought that one of my waters wasn't fully like screwed on from the side and was like leaking out because I had just adjusted some water. And so I just, you know, I reached around, looked back, and I had shit running all down the back of my leg where I just had like diarrhea. I didn't even know that I had let my, you know, bowel movements go. It just kind of went on its own. I just felt the wet running down my leg, and then I, you know, reached around and realized I had shit my pants. So yeah, I kind of broke down at that point. I was still on the phone with my wife and my mom, and yeah, it was probably one of the lowest points that I've been in my life. It was weird, kind of, you know, being on the phone with them and have them experience that with me, and just kind of the, you know, I don't know, just how bad I felt at that point, and how low I really was on myself, and yeah, my belief was just not there anymore. I basically told them that I was gonna go down there, I was gonna clean the shit off my leg, I was gonna change into the only other pair of underwear that I had. I only had one pair of shorts, so I had to take those pair of shorts, you know, used a little bit of, you know, so a little bit of water as I could, and tried to clean what I could off of them. And I was just kind of in my, you know, luckily they were like long compression underwear, but you know, that's all I had, so that's what I was wearing down there. Hooked the other stuff the outside of my bag to dry at least as much as it could on the last 5 miles down. And yeah, once I got to Scissors Crossing, I went under there, I got some water, and then I went and stood. Took me probably about 30 to 45 minutes to get a ride at Scissors Crossing. I was very thankful for the guy who did end up picking me up. He was a super nice guy. He drove me in town, and right at the end I kind of knew that, you know, all the goals and all the intentions I had, at least to do this kind of in a self-supported way, where, you know, I guess the rule or the goal that I was trying to have was to not get in any cars throughout the entire hike. And yeah, on the morning of day 3, that goal was already out the window, and you know, I was already kind of figured that my goal of hiking the PCT in 60 days was no longer at least going to be done in the way that I had wanted it to. So, you know, it was a tough pill to swallow, and I was, you know, trying to figure out exactly where my mind was at, but I just felt that if I kept going, I was putting myself in unnecessary risk, and I knew that if I couldn't eat and I could hardly drink and I just shit my pants, that, you know, it was probably time to get some help, and that, you know, that it would just prove that I wasn't as ready as I thought I was, and I obviously wasn't ready to handle the environment that I was placed in when I went out there. So yeah, that was kind of my first 3 days right off the bat. That's what actually happened, getting out there on the first 3 days. And yeah, it was the hardest test of my life for sure, physically and mentally, and one I'll never forget. And it was quite the experience. And luckily, I just only stayed one night in Julian. I got up the next morning, got a ride back on trail, basically ended up stopping again when I got it to Paradise Cafe. I had some lower body issues that were going on, so I was already pretty down too, so I never really like regained my confidence. I was still moving, I was hiking, you know, as much as I could, but when I got to Paradise Cafe, I got a ride into Idyllwild. I stayed for half a day and then one full day, and then got back on trail that following morning. I was able to get on trail by like before 7 o'clock and started hiking, and that's when I ran into some other really bad lower body injuries. I had some type of tendonitis, or possibly even a stress fracture through my left shin, and my whole lower leg just swelled up. I was no longer able to like really pick my toes up. I had like drop foot. My leg was swollen where my sock was. My leg really like was huge, and then right where my sock was, you could see the impression of my sock in my leg. Had some bruising on the front of the shin, and it had one little spot that was super tender, so I thought that it might even be a stress fracture. And I actually made it all the way up to the top of San Jacinto Mountain. I made it to the peak. When I got to the peak, my leg was already in pretty bad shape, and it was like, well, I made it to the top of San Jacinto. Yeah, once I got to the top, and with the shape that my leg was, I knew there was no way I could keep going. I needed to go back. I could hardly pick my toes up, and so I turned around. I went back down the peak the same way I went up, and then just went down to Humber Park. Was lucky enough to get kind of a ride to town, and then I had to spend 5 days in Idyllwild rehabbing my leg. I ended up staying at the campground that was right in Idyllwild. Every day I would slowly walk myself to the coffee shop. All the people at Higher Grounds Coffee Shop were so friendly to me. They would give me ice to ice my leg, so I would sit out there, listen to a book, I'd ice my leg, have some coffee, and I'd usually walk over to the grocery store that was kind of right by the library, and I'd get some breakfast, and I'd go just kind of eat. I'd get like tortillas and some hard-boiled eggs or whatever I could that was super cheap, and just try to just eat what I could, ice my leg, and then when the library was open, I would go over in the library, and I just read. I ended up reading the book Into Thin Air, so I got to read a whole book while I was in Idyllwild. And I spent 5 days just kind of relaxing, moving as little as possible, and just trying to get my leg in shape to hike. First 2 weeks of my journey ended up being, kind of the worst way to start the hike possible. I made it, 180 miles in those 2 weeks. And yeah, every one of them was painful and miserable and challenging and all of it. And I wasn't able to hit the goal of hiking it in 60 days. I was so happy with my experience as a whole. I was very happy that I was able to not have to come home, especially after those first 2 weeks. Coming down from San Jacinto Mountain, I was saying to myself, this could be my last day on the PCT, possibly ever, if I never got back out. Everything kind of came together. I did what I had to recover. I got back on trail. I hit my strides, and I made it, 1,800 miles plus. I finished off at Crater Lake. That's where my wife and my mom flew in to Seattle, where my brother lives, and they drove down to Crater Lake and picked me up, and we kind of explored a little bit of the coast before we went back to Seattle to spend some time with my brother and his girlfriend at their house in Seattle. And it was just, overall, it was just an amazing experience. I couldn't have asked it to end better. Crater Lake, me and my wife had traveled across the country there twice, so we had already been there on 2 different occasions, and it's one of our favorite places in the entire country. So it was just only fitting that that's exactly where the hike would end for this year. I was happy with the effort that I gave, and that I only took 6 days where I didn't hike any miles, all due to injuries. 5 of them were in that day in Idyllwild. But other than that, I think I averaged like 29 point something miles per day, so almost 30 miles a day, including the 6 days where I had a 0. Overall, I got out there. I tried to spend as much time on trail as possible. My goal was to be out there, was to move fast and enjoy every bit of the experience, and just push myself to the limits that I had set out for myself. Even though I wasn't going to be able to hit the goal of hiking the entire trail in 60 days, I was going to push to see what kind of miles I could string together and see how far I could get with my 2 feet in the time frame that I did have. I wouldn't take back anything. I'm so happy with the experience, for all the people that I met, the amazing stories that I have from my journey out there, and just I couldn't be happier to be able to experience that, to kind of set a goal like that, and to be able to go out there. It really is a dream come true. I will be putting out another video very soon on exactly what I took on the trail, my whole entire gear list, everything I took, everything I used, what worked, what didn't work, the things that I liked and didn't like. So be on the lookout for that video, and I hope it helps you, as I know a lot of people are preparing for their PCT for 2023. So I'm super excited for you guys, and hope that anything I put out can help you in any way possible, or at least just give you some ideas or some thoughts, or anything at all. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share, and of course subscribe to keep following along as I post some different videos and things coming up, PCT related, hiking related, art, everything. I'm just going to keep posting content about my life and things I find interesting, so I hope you guys would also find those interesting. Thanks again for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.